Welcome back to another edition of Political Breakfast. We are so glad that you are here listening on WABE. It is the holiday season, and I think we're all in the holiday mood here. Brian Robinson is here. Tharon Johnson is here. Kind of, sort of. He's out and about celebrating or celebrating our Falcons and trying to push them on to a win in Vegas. Here's hoping. How about those Falcons?
Hey, listen, as we tape, this is a very early Monday morning for me, but I was so committed to bringing my microphone, which, by the way, Lisa and Lily, y'all made me sound really good last week because I know that I was actually out of town last week as well when we taped. But no, look, I feel good about this trip. You know, shout out to Delta. They loaded up as many Falcons fans on the plane as they could. When we arrived, you got to email and sort of a text messages of all the sort of pep rallies and pre-parties. And look, this is a big day for Kirk Cousins. I mean, Kirk Cousins has got to go out Monday night and win. And he needs to not only win, he needs to not throw a lot of interceptions. But, you know, this is very interesting too, Lisa, because Desmond Ridder, actually, Lisa, is going to be the starting quarterback for the Las Vegas Raiders. I mean, so there's a little bit of a storyline here because, as we know, he was our starting quarterback just a year ago.
Yeah. I'll tell you the other storyline for Georgia Bulldog fans is Brock Bowers is on that Raiders team. We love Brock Bowers. He is on path to be the most prolific, rookie tight end of all time. And when you talk about people like Tony Gonzalez and Travis Kelce and Gronk and just some, superstars of the game, and he is already at the top. And it just reminds Georgia fans of this little thing. I don't know if you know this, Tharon, but Georgia fans have this thing in their craw that the Falcons never take Georgia players, despite the fact that we have more draft picks over the last 5 years than any other college program in America. It's incredible to me.
Yeah.
DJ Shockley and I talked about that. And as you know, he was a quarterback at University of Georgia and also played starting quarterback for the Falcons. But I want to say that since he was the quarterback, they've definitely had to maybe at least take one. But you're right. I mean, there are no star.
It's very few. Yeah.
Yeah,
Lorenzo
star
Carter's
players.
on the team.
That we've taken. But no, I feel good about the Falcons, Lisa. We're gonna win.
I was gonna say, I hope when this podcast hits that we will be celebrating a win for the Falcons because 4 straight losses. How does this happen year after year? We're number one and we were top of the division, and then slowly slipping and
there's some hope. Number one, look, we Kirk Cousins definitely cannot throw interceptions. Our defense is definitely starting to get sacks, which has been a criticism very early in the year. And, we get very predictable in the second half. I mean, if you look at our formations, there's not a lot of trick plays. There's not a lot of things. And I think that Bijan has got to get going early. And Calvin Pitts, I mean, he's been non-existent. I know that because I have him in my fantasy league, and
he's getting a lot of bad chatter.
He needs to get going early. So there's a lot of Falcons fans that have made the trip. I think we'll be well represented. This stadium is amazing. This will be my first time going there to see a game. Shout out to HNTB, who's a client of mine who actually helped build the stadium. So I'm looking forward to seeing the great work that they were able to engineer with this atmosphere that they said is very electric in that stadium.
Oh gosh, Kirk Cousins though, what do you think he's thinking? He's got to be nervous. You think?
Yeah, if he throws more than one interception in this game,
I feel for him. I really
Michael
do.
Penix
that
is definitely on deck, warming up, mouthpiece in, chin strap buckled. He ready to roll. Get in there.
Yeah, that pressure's not great. Yeah, for sure. All right. The politics continues here in our great state of Georgia, here in Atlanta. Our governor, once again, talking about tort reform. And Brian, you have something to say about that.
Well, at the biennial last week, which is where the legislators go for their every 2-year meeting before the session, when all the new members get some training, but all the legislators go. It's a big cattle call. The governor does a little speech there. And, often what Kemp has done with these type of addresses, whether it's the biennial, whether it's exit issues, whether it's the state of the state, is he gives a state of the state address. Here's what's happening. Here's what I've been working on. Here are some metrics that I'm proud of. For him to go out there and say, I want to see tort reform, I think that this is a priority that must be addressed. It is hurting our business community. It is hurting our reputation as the number one state in the nation for business. The fact that he is putting a priority on one issue, the singularity of that, suggests that this is going to be the top of the heap when it comes to what the General Assembly is looking at this year. And so I think you can almost guarantee that we're going to see some kind of progress. Now, it's not an easy path. There's going to be a lot of resistance. The trial attorneys do a really good job of spreading money around. And when they give donations, legislators know what it's for. It's because the trial attorneys are interested in not reforming our current system. They're benefiting from it. They're getting a big cut of these jackpot juries. And so because of that investment they've made, the governor's team and those in the legislature who want to see some progress, want to see some reforms, have got their work cut out for them. We've got to go and make the case to Georgians that this is not only hurting big business, which, I think too many voters are like, they can swallow the cost. It's also hurting regular Georgians who are having a harder time getting insurance. If they can get insurance, that's much more expensive than it should be because insurance companies are having to pay out a lot of these big verdicts. And when they have to do that, we all pay the price for it. I think what's important to note is that Georgia is an outlier. It's amongst the worst for these sort of jackpot juries. And there are a lot of narratives from small businesses that you're going to begin to see over the next few months about how this is impacting people who are investing in our communities, who are creating jobs here, and are being unfairly targeted. Nobody wants to give immunity to people who have acted irresponsibly, who have been negligent. But if a crime happens on your property, it doesn't mean that you were negligent. It doesn't mean you did something wrong. And it certainly doesn't mean you should pay out millions of dollars or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. When you do that and spread it out around the state, it's going to jack up insurance costs for everybody and make this a less appealing place for businesses to locate. I talked to a landscaping company, the biggest one based in Georgia, and they paid a $200,000 claim because one of their trucks clipped the rearview mirror of a car. Didn't hurt anybody, didn't hurt the body of the car, but the insurance company just doesn't want to go to court because they don't know what's going to happen there. In the landscaping business, and this is writ large over other industries as well, they're saying limit your footprint in Georgia because the litigation costs are too threatening. So we can't have that atmosphere. This is going to be a priority. Kemp's assuring it. And the issue now is how is this going to play out? What is it going to look like?
Is the issue of tort reform something that piques the interest of the average Georgia resident, though?
Not if you call it tort reform.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to make it about lawsuit abuse. You got to make it about destroying small businesses. You got to make it about them. Like this makes the cost of your meal at a restaurant that has been sued higher. This makes your insurance cost higher because
speak their language, right? Yeah. Speak their language.
And guess what? All of us who have jobs work for employers who are at risk. So we all have a stake in it. And one thing that we want to make sure we preserve is these mom and pops on Main Street in Georgia. We've had this erosion because of a good thing, being able to order whatever you want online and have it delivered to your door. But that has hurt some of these small businesses. And this is just one way of protecting them from a needless cost and irresponsible juries.
Yeah, one thing he's stressing, though, is not an easy fix. It's something that's going to hopefully start with the legislature in 2025, but it may take some time to really roll out, correct?
Well, I think what we're going to have to see early on in this debate is whether or not they focus on premises liability, which, of course, retail establishments, restaurants are very interested in. Hospitals, healthcare providers, they're going to want to see some medical malpractice reform. So I do think you're going to begin to see some focus on one of these issues. But I think premises liability and medical malpractice both deserve a lot of attention.
Yeah. Tharon, does tort reform interest you in any way?
Well, look, I think Brian did a really good job of giving sort of a framework of what the issues are. I think he sort of intentionally or unintentionally sort of sides more with the reform. But
Yeah.
I'll do my best to sort of talk about maybe what the fight is going to be. And that is, Lisa, the Georgia Trial Lawyers Association, beyond giving a lot of money. I mean, this is an organization that attorneys are members of, and they pride themselves on not just fighting for their rights during the legislative session, but making sure that all trial lawyers are protected. I mean, these are women and men who make a living off going to trial. Many of them are plaintiffs' attorneys. And so they've been anticipating this fight for a while, and they have someone like Madeline Simmons, who's the outgoing chair, who's a city council member in Brookhaven, a very well accomplished attorney who's also a city council member. When I tell you, Lisa, she was at the legislative session almost every day last year. I mean, that's the type of input that you're going to see from their members. Now, I can also see the other side. I mean, you got the Georgia Chamber of Commerce. You start talking about people who are looking at this. You have manufacturers, manufacturing jobs that are looking at this as well. So what's happening here, Lisa, is that there's a coalition building on both sides. You got a bunch of people, including the chamber, the governor, some electeds, and others sort of trying to get the reform passed. You got GTLA, you got some other people who are going to fight against it. But the one thing I would say is this, is to kind of play this out. You got to build a winning coalition, right? And so how many Democrats and how many Republicans are going to side with the governor or side with GTLA? And maybe the lieutenant governor and speaker, B-Rock, correct me if I'm wrong, I think they have both come out and said that they support tort reform, correct? Am I right on that? Okay, so you literally got the governor, lieutenant governor, the speaker, and a bunch of people in associations going against a group of lawyers in both chambers, the Senate and the House, many of whom are in leadership, by the way, and GTLA, who's been lobbying and preparing for this moment for a decade. I mean, it hasn't just been this 1 year. And so I think look, the question is this, and they're not paying me, Lisa, so, I'm not going to give them too much of my time and energy to give them a strategy. But you can't assume that all Republicans are for it, and you can't assume that all Democrats are against it. So what will happen is, Lisa, you'll have a few Republicans who will shock the governor, lieutenant governor, and speaker, and the chambers and others, and say, hey, you know what, guys? Yeah, to your point, Lisa, it really is not on my priority list. Like, I'm okay. And then you're going to have some Democrats that will say, you know what, GTLA, y'all have been coming through for me, man. You've been giving me a lot of money. I appreciate all the parties and events and support. But you know what? I kind of want to side with the people here. And the thing is, you haven't seen GTLA yet make their case, because what they're going to talk about, Lisa, is fairness, right? The people on the other end, the insurance companies, the companies have got to be protected. But what about the victims, right? And how they're going to tell the stories. And so you're going to see third-party amplification, stories being told on both sides to bring a level of humanization, but also to really make sure that these members in the state legislature, whether they vote for it or against it, they can go back and explain it to their constituents in their districts. So this is going to be a big fight. I think Brian gave a lot more details than I could. I just try to provide a balance on this show. But I would tell you this, don't assume that every Democrat is against it, and don't assume that every Republican is for it.
That's right. That's a very good analysis, and I hope you're right there about not every Democrat being against it. And you're also right that not every Republican is for it. Some of them are trial attorneys at the plaintiff's bar themselves, so they have their own interests and their own viewpoints based upon that. One thing that I think that Democrats need to think about is we saw stories over the past 3 to 4 months about Black business owners in high crime zip codes having trouble getting insurance. Now, these are people doing the right thing. They're investing in their communities. They're creating jobs. They're trying to be entrepreneurs. They're trying to achieve the American dream. But yet, because of the communities where they live having a higher level of crime, insurance rates are higher, and it makes it unaffordable for businesses that are just getting by or just getting started and need every cent to keep going. So what you're seeing is this non-racist but data-driven redlining of Black businesses. And that's a great concern in a city where so much of our economy is driven by Black business owners and Black entrepreneurs. And we want to make sure that they have every tool in the toolbox to be able to succeed. And this is something that affects not just big businesses, or, what you might see of as, old white guys in suits. It goes far beyond that. And I hope that we can begin to have a conversation about how this impacts minority community businesses as well. I would love to see the Black Chamber of Commerce speak out on this, the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce speak out on this, because they really animate and bring that issue to life. That this is not just about big businesses. This is about mom and pops. It is about our neighbors who are trying to get ahead.
Yeah, high insurance costs have been a deterrent for a long time. It does say a lot, though, with Governor Kemp jumping out with this so early on, right, and so adamant about it.
Yeah, you have some governors who like have a laundry list of agenda items that has not been Kemp's style. He's been very focused. Like 2019, we had the heartbeat bill. In 2022, he had the constitutional carry bill on gun rights. This would be like a signature issue for him and a legacy issue for him. So I think it's highly important that something get done. His political operation has raised over $1 million. You're going to see them begin to deploy that in digital ads and in other efforts to target those members who may be on the fence.
Look, Lisa, as Brian pointed out, the governor's got some political capital left. Last year, this time, there was all this anticipation that he was going to speak out and be aggressively supportive of it. That did not happen. And so the fact, to Brian's point, that he's actually speaking about it at the biannual, you have the Eggs and Issues breakfast coming up at Georgia Chamber. He also has the State of the State. And that's not also accounting for the other holiday parties, events, fundraisers. These legislators will be raising money aggressively before the session starts. So the governor and the lieutenant governor and the speaker collectively are probably going to have about maybe, 24 opportunities to not only talk about this publicly, but to actually talk to members as they go back into the session. And then also, look, this is something that Democrats have got to figure out, because I still believe that maternal mortality will still be at the forefront. Brian and I just had a robust conversation about the need for more transparency with our Georgia correction system, our Georgia prisons. I said this, that Georgia prisons should not be a place where people go to die. It should be a place where people go to be rehabilitated and to actually, earn a second chance at life. And the last thing I think, I'm going to say it over and over and over again, because I have so many females, particularly moms, had a lunch on Friday with a very well-respected registered lobbyist who said, Tharon, I am still afraid about what will happen when I drop my kid off at school. And so the fact that we're still not talking about a need for more state and federal and local multi-jurisdictional planning to make sure that what happened at Appalachia High School does not happen again in Georgia, where we have a young teenager get a gun who's clearly got some issues and go into a school and shoot and kill people. And so I think the question is, how does tort reform sort of add up in that? And I think that the fact that the governor is focusing on it, I will be very interested to see how his leadership, but also how the Democrats respond to it. And again, GTLA, the Georgia Trial Lawyers Association, and I think they got other coalition members, I'm just blanking on who they are definitely going to push back. And I think that the level of humanization on this issue, you're going to see people come forward to talk about how it's going to affect them on both sides.
Keeping our students safe, gun safety still is going to rank pretty high this legislative session, don't you think?
I
Brian?
hope so. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I hope so. I mean, other than Speaker Burns, no one is talking about it, Lisa. I mean, other than Speaker, which was, correct me if I'm wrong, a few months ago. No one has put forth a plan other than him about it, Lisa. And so, I mean, do we have to wait for it to happen again? Well, if that's the strategy, it will happen again. It's going to happen sooner than we think it would be. So I think we need more Democrats and Republicans to speak up about it.
Well, the speaker has been a leading voice on this, and I do think that there's a lot of momentum in the House side to get something done. Like Governor Kemp, with the state at large and with the General Assembly, Speaker Burns has a lot of political capital with the House. I mean, the House members saw him worked his can off over the last 2 years to raise money and make sure that the Republicans could have every resource they needed going into the 2024 election, and they were able to really hit a high watermark in the election, only losing 2 seats. It could have been worse. They were going to lose at least 2 because of redistricting. So he did an excellent job. Look at what the speaker has done. I mean, no one out there is putting out a more robust agenda and is offering more of a vision and a map for legislators to use than Speaker Burns is. I mean, it really is incredible. I mean, on health care, on gun safety reforms, school safety reforms, on taxes, across the board, he is coming forward saying, hey, this is something the House is going to look at and we're going to take action on. He paid a lot of respect to Governor Kemp's Medicaid waiver plan, but has continued to say we're going to keep looking at other options like the Arkansas-style Medicaid expansion where the recipients are put on private insurance as opposed to government insurance. So he's somebody who's got some ideas and he's willing to speak up. He's willing to put his name on the line and really push to get some of his priorities accomplished. So, I think that gives him a lot of leverage going into the session because he's coming forward with a lot of ideas. And I agree with Tharon on the Department of Corrections, by the way. We got to do something. The speaker has done something on that. He's got a committee working on reforms, as well as the governor having an outside group that is doing analysis and offering plans to make things safer and better. At the end of the day, here's a major problem. A lot of those guards make less than $40,000 a year, less than $50,000 a year, and it's highly dangerous. So these gang members come to the guards and they're like, either I can give you $12,000 for you to smuggle in phones, or we can kill your family. That's literally happening. So what do you do if you're making less than? Do you take the $12,000, or do you risk having someone shoot you in your driveway, which has literally happened in Georgia down in Glenville? We have got to do something about pay. We've got to have more guards. We've got to do something to jam the cell phone signals in prisons, which the federal government won't let us do. And we've got to do something about the gang problem. It is a nightmare. I would be terrified for the lives of anybody I knew going into a Georgia state prison right now.
But those have been conversations for so long, right? I mean, it's nothing new, but they've been talked about for so long. So I don't know. When are we going to get something done?
Well, I think that the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and other news outlets and WABE, you guys wrote about this as well, is that the conditions are one thing, but it's also the lack of transparency. Like, they can't get information from the leaders. The second thing that I think is happening is that B-Rob said something that I think is so interesting. Lisa, when we talked about this last week, I can't tell you the amount of text messages that I got from people saying, hey, my biological father just was released from prison and he is now trying to figure out, simple things like how, the use of AI and the internet, how it affects his lives. I heard from these moms saying, hey, my sister has been incarcerated and has developed illnesses while being in such deplorable conditions. But Brian said something I think is key, is that you never really care about things until they happen to you. And it's not like we just have only black and brown people in these prisons across Georgia. No, we have a lot of white folks too, right? And I think that we're speaking up for all Georgians who have family members, friends, colleagues who have gone to jail, and they deserve that second chance. And so I think that it's a lack of transparency, the lack of pay. They deserve more money to be paid. It needs to be more of an attractive job. They need to be safe when they go in. But also, it's one of these things, too, and I know we don't have time to get into it today, but there have been reports that you hear sheriffs across the state saying, hey, our jails have basically turned into mental institutions because we are housing so many mentally ill people who are awaiting trial. We need more help from the state. We need more help from the federal government. So, Lisa, you always ask that question, will something be done? I just think that it's going to take a Republican and a Democrat, female and male, working together to push it and make it a priority. That's what it's really going to take. And it's going to have some money behind it and some grassroots.
All right, coming up in our next show, we're going to talk about how a former leader of the foiled Buckhead cityhood movement gets a new appointment in the Trump administration. How did that happen? Brian and Tharon weigh in. That's coming up on the next Political Breakfast.